So, I'm guessing you read the title. So, I'm not a therian anymore. Let me explain myself. Oh, also this is scripted, by the way. I'm just gonna be reading from my script here. Don't mind that. For some background information, around 2 years ago, I was introduced to the concept of therianthropy by my cousins. Looking into it more online, I found out I was one, and my cousin helped me find my stereotype, which happened to be what I thought was a feral cat, but turned out to be a regular house cat later. I got introduced to the culture around therianthropy, and just altered humanity in general, which was basically quads and gear and, that kind of stuff. And I did it because I saw online how what seemed to be every single therian I saw online would wear gear and do quads, and I followed along. Soon enough, my entire mindset to therianthropy was just focused on jumping high enough and making cat masks that looked good enough to the awful toxic standards the therian community had, and still has to this day, actually. I also ended up pretending I knew the past life as well as the species of my stereotype, because I was scared that if I didn't know that about myself, I wasn't a real therian. So for months on end, and almost an entire year, I was breaking myself down to be good enough to the toxic standards of the therian community. I was always trying to make my gear look good enough, and make my jumps high enough, and that made me lose focus on my actual identity as a therian. And after nearly an entire year of hurting myself both physically and mentally, I stopped out of it. This is not what therianthropy is. I spent almost an entire year of trying to look exactly what a therian online should look like, because I was scared of being weird, which says a lot because the therian community itself is weird. I was scared of being excluded and shunned because I wasn't living up to those horrible standards. But then after way too long, I distanced myself from the therian community, at least online, and actually started focusing on my real identity, which improved a lot of things within my altered human experience. After a while, I was actually starting to figure out things, and doing things for myself rather than as something the community expected of me. The second year of therianthropy for me was great. I figured out my stereotypes, which were a house cat, some unidentified canine, and a manta ray. Things were going great, but then you know how when you're a therian, you start to feel this sort of connection to your stereotype. I slowly just, stopped getting that connection. And, I went many months without it before realizing what was going on. I was incredibly confused for a while before learning about the possibility of me detransitioning. Something in me was thinking, there's no possible way I'm just suddenly not a therian. I mean, come on, I've been a therian for 2 years and this is an involuntary identity. How could I possibly just not be one anymore? And these thoughts, I ended up being right. I was no longer a therian. All that connection was just, poof, gone. And I know what you're thinking. Therianthropy is an involuntary identity. You can't just leave. That is true, but the thing is, in the same way you involuntarily become a therian, you can also involuntarily detransition from being one. Because a lot of the time, identity isn't something crystal clear. Think of it as a body of water. A body of water will change over time while some aspects of it stay the same. Things will change, with new things reappearing as well as old things disappearing, making that body of water very fluid in what it can be. And that's the exact same thing with not just therianthropy or altered humanity, but any involuntary identity. To put it simply, I did not detransition from being a therian because I didn't want to be one anymore. It's just something that sort of happened naturally. And like the simile I used earlier, while things will disappear, new things come in too to keep a sort of balance. What I'm implying is that I am still an alter human. Although this is my goodbye to therianthropy, this is hello to fictionkin. You know that unknown canine species I mentioned earlier? it turns out to be my otherkin type. Wait, no, this is a little bit outdated. It turned out all my old therian identities, it linked together, and now I figured it out. I am a fictionkin, and I kin as a backrooms entity, which makes me a fictionkin. So in the end, I found something new that really felt close to home in the best way possible. So after 2 whole years, I figured it out. I am a backrooms entity fictionkin. One thing I'd also like to mention is that my fictionkin identity has affected my gender. Well, not really affected it, but it's kind of like linked together. Now, I won't go too deep into my gender identity, as it is pretty complicated, but what I'm saying here is that I identify with what is called a xenogender. To dive a little further, I identify as what I'd like to call entity gender. Although I personally don't use xeno pronouns, I'd like to have the secondary sort of nickname of creature or entity. I found out about this after my dad had referred to me as a silly creature a couple times as a joke, and I was like, I like that. But just as a reminder that although altered humanity can affect gender, it is not directly related to gender itself, nor is it part of the LGBTQ. It is a completely unrelated concept, but it can also tie together in some cases. So here I am, in the present day, proudly identifying as a fictionkin, as well as just generally being an altered human. So I hope you guys understand my departure from the therian community and the identity itself. So that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you don't hate me for my little identity change. But anyways, this is the end of the video. Have a nice day or night. See ya!